Hello all the crazy people out there, my name is Michael, I like wizards and dragons and making games, and welcome back to Scribble. I thought I made this video a while ago, back when I was making a lot of videos about Scribble, but apparently I didn't, so we're gonna do it now. Let's talk about things you can do with the Scribble Typist. So Scribble, for those of you who don't know, is the coolest thing that's ever happened to GameMaker. It is a system which allows you to efficiently render text effects like what you see on screen right now, and it also has a bunch of other side features like automatically scrolling out text like you saw at the beginning of the video. I'm not going to do a crash course introduction on it today, but if you've never seen it before and you want to learn more, which you probably do because it's really cool, I've made like half a dozen videos on it in the past and I'll have them linked. Anyway, today we're going to be looking at additional things that you can do when the Scribble Typist reads out text, like character by character. And that includes, but is not limited to, playing sounds when you read characters out, and executing custom events within the middle of text strings when they're read out like this. It's going to be a lot of fun. Before we start, a lot of this is going to make use of what are known as callbacks, which, if you're not familiar, they're basically functions that you save for later and execute at some point in the future. You make use of them a lot in functional programming. If you've ever used the functional array features in GameMaker, you've used them. They also appear in some other places like layer update scripts and that kind of thing. Anyway, we're going to go back to GameMaker, and the first thing that I think I'm going to do is play a series of sounds every time a Scribble when Scribble Typist reads out characters. So I've gone ahead and recorded and added a handful of sound effects to this project, just sc_thwap 1, 2, and 3. If I play the sound in the IDE, you may be able to hear it. They're pretty quiet and short. They're just a tapping sound. I made them by tapping my finger on the desk and recording that. And it's pretty common in games to have sound effects play when text is read out, either like a mechanical clicking, as if it's a physical typewriter. This sort of feature is often called typewriter text, or like a squeaky voice if you want to have like Animal Crossing dialogue sounds. If you're making a game with a medieval theme and your UI looks like an illuminated manuscript or something, you might have like the scratching noises of a quill, that kind of thing. Anyway, we can very easily have Scribble play sounds as it reads characters out. I can say typist, we're off to a good start. Sound. There are two methods for this, actually, belonging to the Scribble Typist, not to the Scribble object itself. This is almost everything that we're going to do today is going to involve the Scribble Typist, and we also have typist sound per character. And I'm going to talk about both of these. The behavior of these two functions are similar, but they're subtly different. Typist sound per character will always play a sound when a new character appears, except for you can blacklist characters to not have this happen. And typist.sound will simply play the sounds that you want to play on an interval, like on certain intervals of time. And I'm going to start with that one because I think it's a little bit easier. So there's going to be a few arguments that you want to pass to the typist.sound method. And that's going to be, firstly, an array of sounds. So if you want just a single sound to play, when you read out characters with the typist, you can just have it be an array of a single sound, of a single element like this. And if you're like me in this instance and you have a collection of sounds that you want to play and you want them to be randomly selected, you can put all the sounds that you want to be randomly selected from in an array and use that as the first argument. The second argument is going to be, if I mouse over this, is it actually going to be nice enough to show me? It is. The second argument that you're going to want to pass to the .sound method is going to be the amount of overlap in milliseconds. If you want your sounds to play, and if you want your sounds to wait for completion before the next one plays, you'll set the overlap duration to 0. I'll get back to some other examples of what it might sound like for different values later on. Next, you're going to want pitch min and pitch max. So if you want to add some random variation to the pitch of your sounds as they play, you can change the pitch min and pitch max to some other value. Again, I'll play around with those later so that we can hear. I guess I can't really say see, but we can hear what it's going to sound like. And lastly, you have an optional argument for the gain. That's just going to be the volume, and that's pretty straightforward. If you want to have your sounds play louder or quieter, you can set your volume to like 0.5 for half, or 2 for double. Or the relationship between volume and gain is complicated, but we're gonna go with that simplified explanation right now. Anyway, now if I run this, we can hear that we've got a collection of sounds playing, and they're going to as the typewriter text is read out, we're going to hear a rhythmic tapping sound, thanks to the Typist.sound method. So if you want, that was pretty slow, and that sounded like more like honestly like a drum beat than anything else. So if you want a little bit of overlap between sounds, if you don't want to wait for the previous sound to stop playing before moving on to the next one, you can set the delay to something bigger. All of these sounds are like 0.2-ish seconds, so about between a fifth and a quarter of a second. And I'm going to, I think, set the delay to 150 milliseconds. And if we do that, it's going to sound a little bit more like a... I think I would consider that to sound a little bit more like a typewriter effect, even though it's not really a mechanical clicking. It's not quite as fast as if it sounds like a woodpecker just drilling away at a tree or something like that. Or in my case, the vinyl siding of the house right outside my bedroom window. Not looking forward to that as the weather warms up and the birds start to return from their southward migration. What was I talking about? So that's the delay. Maybe if you want it a little slower, 100 milliseconds of overlap would be a little better if you want it to be faster. I think that sounds pretty good. If you want it to be faster, you could increase it. The pitch, I don't really think this needs much explanation, but if you want to have some more random variation in the sounds that you hear when the text is being read out, we can change the pitch argument. Let's say min is 1 and max is 1.5, and this will also affect the tempo. And now we have something that sounds a little bit more like you're tapping on like the outside of an empty plastic bottle or something like that. You'll often find in games, especially games from like the DS and GBA generation of video games, they would often do things like younger characters would have a higher pitch with their like squeaky voice typewriter text effects, and older characters would have lower pitched voices. And I always thought that was a really cool way to add just like a little bit of character to NPCs in games. Anyway, we'll move on to sound per character. And as you can probably infer, this is going to have sound not playing on a timer, but it is going to have the sounds play every time a new character is revealed. And for the most part, it takes the same arguments as the last function that we were talking about, but it does not have an overlap parameter, because that's not really relevant. We're playing sounds when characters are revealed, not after a certain amount of time has elapsed. We still have our pitch and our pitch min and pitch max arguments. We still have our gain argument. And we also have an exception string, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. But first, let me run this, and it's going to sound a little bit different. Now that sounds like a woodpecker drilling away at the vinyl siding outside my window at 5 o'clock in the morning. Alright, so sound per character can be a little bit intense. It may not be quite as bad if I were to reduce the speed that the typewriter is going to read out text, although it's still going to be faster than what we had before. I want to say speed of 1 is going to be 1 character per frame, which at 60 FPS is obviously going to be playing 60 sounds per second, which is going to be a lot. 0.5 characters per frame is going to be 1 character per 2 frames, which is going to be 30 sounds per second, which is honestly still a lot. Maybe if we knock that down to like 0.3 or something, it'll be a little more reasonable. Alright, still definitely faster than what we had earlier with the Typist.sound method, but it's still, you can actually sort of hear the like pauses in between the individual sounds now. So let's move on to the exception string. So if you want a certain character to not have a sound played when it appears on screen, you can use the exception string for that. So if I want the sound to not play when a space is revealed, so that we have a little bit of pause between words, I think that sounds a little bit more reasonable. You can have the exception string include a space. If you want more than 1 character to be featured in the exception string, you can add more than 1 character. So if you want like punctuation marks, like the main 4 period, comma, exclamation mark, and question mark, if you want those to not have sounds play on them, you can add that as well. You're not really going to hear that much of a difference in this example because there's not a lot of punctuation, and most of the punctuation marks are followed by a space anyway. Maybe if you wanted it to be a little bit more irregular, you could like you could add spaces and also like A, E, I, O, U vowels to the exception string, at least in English and languages that use like Latin character sets, and that's going to have all the vowels that appear to not have sounds play on them. I believe it's case sensitive, so like the capital A still would, and that will definitely decrease the intensity of the woodpecker effect a little bit. I think I can probably increase that, and it'll sound a little better now. Actually, that sounds better than I thought it was going to. I actually kind of like that. So that's the sound per character and the exception string. So moving on from sounds, you can also have the Scribble typewriter execute functions either per character or like for each character in the string, or when the typewriter gets to the end of the message. So we can say typist.function per character. And that's going to be, as I said, this is going to take a callback function, which is going to be executed every time a new character is revealed. The callback function is going to take a couple of arguments itself. One is going to be the text element. I guess I'll call that text underscore element. One is going to be the text position, and the third is going to be the typist.
Hey.
And you can use these parameters to the callback function to do like really whatever you want. I'll start out simple. Let's just show debug message text position, and this is going to show the just print out in the console the numbers 1 through whatever, 0 through whatever. So I'm going to have to actually do a little bit more setup if I want this to work, and we'll explain why momentarily. So if I just run this, we're going to see an error message, and it says Scribble allow glyph data getter must be set to true to use per sound character exceptions. Exceptions? Is that the word we're using for that? Anyway, if we want to fix that, we can just take this, we can copy, and we can basically search for it. And in one of the Scribble config files, we have macro Scribble allow glyph data getter, and we want to set that to true if we want this to work. Setting it to false, it's false by default because, as the description says, turning it on will incur some kind of performance penalty. I haven't measured how much that is, and I can't imagine it's much, unless you have like 300 Scribble typists that are all working at the same time, and if you do that, then, well, your game has bigger problems. So now if I were to run this, we can hear the drum beat of the Scribble typewriter effect, and we can see in the console we're going to have the numbers. Well, it was 0 indexed, right? Not 1 indexed because we're using sane character indexing. No, it is 1 indexed. All right. Anyway, when we print out the text position, it's going to go for every character in the message. If you want to actually see the character that's being printed out, you can do a little bit of work using the Scribble text element, for example. We can see, well, we can say, let's call it current glyph is going to be text element dot, it's get glyph is hard to spell, dot get glyph data, right? And for whatever reason, autocomplete just wanted to use like the internal name for that, which I don't understand. And this is a function for the Scribble text element, not the typist, which will get the character information, the glyph information at a given position, which is going to be the text position. The current glyph is going to not be like a character itself, but it's going to be a struct which contains some information about like where the character is on the screen, or at least in like Scribble local space in the vertex buffer. And it's also going to contain a variable which is going to be the Unicode character code, and this is going to be not like the character itself. If we were to print this out, we would just see like the number of the Unicode character codes, which is not going to honestly tell us that much more than just like the text position, unless you have all the Unicode character codes memorized, which sane people don't. But we can turn this into an actual character with the CHR function in GameMaker. It's kind of like the opposite of the ORD function, which will turn like a letter into a number for use with like the keyboard checking functions. Anyway, so if I do this, we can see that the first verse of this little poem is being printed out character by character. That's cool. I think I don't really need to do any more with that. I would like to move on to typist.function on complete, and that's going to be, you can probably guess when this is going to execute. We can define ourselves a little function callback. This is going to take 2 arguments. The callback, there are going to be 2 arguments passed, And those two things are going to be the text element and the typist. We're not going to take a text position because obviously you reach the end. That's not really relevant anymore. We can, let's say, show debug message. You have completed the text, and let's just say text element dot get text, and that should, if we did this correctly, print out a little completion message when we get to the end. And it does not. .get text is not set before reading it. I feel like I had this problem when I was like planning this video out. If memory serves, the first argument that's going to be passed to this callback function is actually going to be like the scope that this code is executing in, which in my case would be like obj_player. So I'm just going to call this like calling object. And then if we want to access the text element, we're going to say like calling object dot scribble object dot text element, like this. And this should at least give us a different error, because I think we're actually going to have to set up something else, as we did with to make the per character effect work. And that is going to be yeah, here we go. Scribble allow text getter, that has to be set to true, which is another one of the configuration macros. All right, fine. I'll just search for it, which is going to do something similar to the allow glyph data getter macro. By the way, there's a lot of Scribble configuration settings. It may be worth just looking through these to see if there's anything relevant in here to your particular project. I'm not going to like go through all of these, but some of the settings in there may be useful to some of you. Anyway, now when we do this, this should work. And I think with this we can move on from the like readout functions and then on to other things. All right, yay! So you have completed the text. You have completed the text readout, and then we can move on. So what else do I want to do next? I think I'm going to comment out all these because I don't want all that appearing in the console and distracting me from other stuff. So next, I think we'll talk about text events, and just like we have like formatting tags like scale or rainbow, shake, color, inline sparse, that sort of thing. You can also define, at least in a sense, your own custom like command tags inside Scribble strings like this. And to do that, you can use the function Scribble Typist add event, Scribble Typists add event. And this is not a method on a typist or a Scribble object, by the way. This is one of the global Scribble scripts. And this is going to be a function which is going to take two arguments. One of them is going to be the name of your custom event, which is going to happen when the typewriter reads them out. I'm just going to go with another real simple example, and I'm just going to say message. And the second argument is going to be a function callback, which is going to execute when the Scribble typewriter gets to your custom event in the string. As usual, this callback is going to take a few arguments. One is going to be the text element, which is going to refer to the text element to which this event belongs, at least assuming that that isn't broken too. The second argument is going to be any parameters that you pass to it as an array of strings. And the third element is going to be the character index. I guess I could also call that like text position too. It's basically the text position from the function per character. Just in case you need any of this information, most of the time what you're really going to need, the only one you're really going to need is going to be the parameters. So do I have any examples in here? So the scale formatting tag in Scribble has one argument, which is going to be, you know, the actual scale, and none else in this example here. But let's say I want to just show a message in the console when we reach a particular position in the Scribble typewriter. We can show debug message, and the message that we can show is going to be params index 0. And an example of that might be something like if we get to like Ragnar the Red, we can use in square brackets message, which is going to be our event, and we can say that we introduced Ragnar the Red. And then maybe later on we can say, and the braggart did swagger and brandish his blade. We're gonna judge Ragnar a bit. Although for those of you who know how this little poem ends, you are probably aware that he gets his comeuppance sooner or later anyway. So we can run this, and as the message is read out, we're gonna see some messages popping out. As soon as the typewriter gets to the location in the string where those message tags were defined. And that is something that you can do with Scribble Typist events. As far as I know, you can't use this to modify, like, the vertex buffer of the Scribble itself. Like, you can't create your own text formatting tags. You can just create, like, events like this that happen when the typist reaches them. If you really want to add your own formatting tags, you can edit the Scribble shader itself, but that's a whole thing that I don't really feel like doing. Some practical examples of this might be something like, if you wanted like, let's say you're making a visual novel and you had, like, a dialogue string, and you wanted one of the character's facial expressions to change when you reach a certain point in the string. And you could insert you could define, like, a custom event for that. Or maybe if you're making, like, one of those GBA or DS era RPGs and you wanted to make a character start hopping up and down when you reach a certain point in the string, that kind of thing. That's an example of Scribble events, Typist events. And I think the last thing I want to do is going to be Scribble macros. This isn't directly related to typists. This will not, you don't need typewriters to, like, be displaying text for this to work, but it is similar enough to, like, typist events that I want to cover it here anyway. So let's say, for example, I'm going to get rid of all the formatting tags in the current version of this string. Alright, so now this is just like the original text with no text formatting or anything like that, except for the SDF effects. And let's say that I'm personally one who believes that, like, the rainbow and wave tags are like violence. If they don't solve your problem, you're not using enough of them. But typing this out and typing out, like, the cancel rainbow... Oh my god. None of you are ever going to take me seriously again. So I have a /wave set to an auto hotkey script on my computer to turn into this Kamoji when I type it. And, makes it a little hard to cancel the rainbow wave tag. This is a very me problem. Anyway, let's say that every time I use the rainbow wave tag, I don't really want to have to type that out and type out the cancellation tags to cancel it every single time. Let's say that I really just wish that I had, like, a single tag, preferably with a short name, that you could type that will turn into the rainbow wave formatting tags. And to do that, we can use the Scribble add macro function. And this is going to take two arguments. One of them is going to be the name of the macro, much like the custom events, and one of them is going to be the callback function. And Scribble macros can also take parameters. I'm probably not going to come up with an example that uses them here, but if you did want to write a Scribble macro that had some parameters, you could pass that to the callback function as well. I'm just going to real simple return. You need to return something for a Scribble macro, which is going to be the string that you replace the original text with. And that can be, in my case, rainbow wave. And if I want to add one for the closing tags, we can just define a second Scribble macro, which is going to be /yay, and then that's going to return /rainbow/wave. And that is going to work in my original string that I'm turning into a Scribble, just as if I was typing it out the long way. Let's see. I'm just going to insert a few more instances of this silliness here. I think that should be enough to prove the point. Wonderful. So that's a feature which you can use to make your job a little bit easier when you, like, writing dialogue in your game or whatever. And I think that's going to do it. So, because Scribble is as huge as it is, there are quite a few more functions and, like, typist methods and that sort of thing which exist, which I'm not going to talk about, and I'm probably not going to make videos on all of them because I don't want this to devolve into just reading lists out of the documentation. But I do encourage you, if you need some functionality that was not covered here, to look through the Scribble documentation and see if there's anything that maybe answers your question. I have a link to it down in the video description, of course. If you want the code that I wrote here, I guess I'll uncomment the per character and on-complete methods now too, now that I'm done. If you want the code for this, look for the GitHub repository down in the description of the video. I like to post videos on the weird stuff you can do in GameMaker, so if anything like this appeals to you, feel free to subscribe. I have a Patreon, so if you want to contribute to the channel, links to that can be found in all the usual places. You should all go check out Wizarducks and the Lost Hat, which is one of the games that I like to work on when I'm not doing YouTube stuff. Link to the Steam page can be found down below. I hope you all find this useful, and I will see you all later. Special thanks to Zenjamin, Squarecrow, Spy Games, Manta Ray, Ganymede Ghost, GameMaker, Edward Holt, and DJ Gibbles for supporting these videos. If you'd like to join their ranks, head on over to the Patreon page down in the video description to join the fun.